Well, welcome everyone. We are so happy that you can join us. This event is sponsored by the Program in Creative Writing at UChicago and the Seminary Co-op Bookstore. The Seminary Co-op is our local and loved bookstore, but certainly is considered an international cultural institution. We are thrilled to be able to work with such an incredible partner. You can find out ways to support them at their website, sebcoop.com. Online book purchases are now available for delivery, curbside pickup, and shipping. And don't forget to check out their podcast, OpenStacks. OpenStacks brings you conversations with scholars, poets, novelists, and activists on subjects as eclectic as the books on their shelves. I'll also add a link into how you can purchase So Forth in the chat for your convenience. And now let's get on with our event. I'm happy to introduce Associate Professor of English and Comparative Literature at the University of Chicago, our very own Rachel Galvin.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, Starsha and Jesse, for getting us organized and making this event happen. I am absolutely thrilled. It is a real honor to introduce Rosanna Warren this evening, who I feel very fortunate to count as a dear colleague. Rosanna is the Hannah Holborn Gray Distinguished Service Professor in the Committee on Social Thought at the University of Chicago. She is a renowned practitioner of that trifecta of literary vocations: poet, translator, and scholar. This year, she has published not one, but two books, as we were just discussing, a comprehensive monumental biography of Max Jacob, the French avant-garde poet, whose work is an important link between symbolism and surrealism. The book is titled Max Jacob, A Life in Art and Letters. It was published by Norton, and this stunning new collection of poems, So Forth, which we are here to celebrate tonight, was also published by Norton. I have to say, I am in awe of the elegance and erudition of the poems that are collected in So Forth. Their sensual precision, the painterly vivacity of their color, their line, their shadow, and the particular alchemy of the personal and the political. As in the poem titled 4th of July, 2018, which is a haunting poem about complicity, in which at 4 in the morning, a dream twists its damp sheets and declares police state, police state. And I'll just read a few lines. Dawn filters into the moon meadow. Birds explode in whistles and coloratura. The dream wakes and stutters, camps, children in camps, as the sky turns powdery white. Still the heat, the smolder, muffles each word, muffles the law in a cadmium yellow day. How slowly we move, how slowly our thoughts ooze out. Another striking section of the book recasts Chaucer's legend of good women in a series of poems dedicated to women writers, artists, and musicians, such as Mary Sidney, Sylvia Marlowe, Coco Chanel, and others. I hope that, Rosanna, you might read some of those poems, or maybe we can discuss them during the Q&A. Yeah. Oh, I have a puppy barking at me. I'm sorry, just give me a moment. I'll see if I can quiet.
He's very cute. I love puppies.
I think he wants to join us.
Let him join us.
I think he will. Come here, buddy. Come here. Come here. Come here. All right. Okay.
Oh,
everyone,
he's
this
a
is
gorgeous
Gizmo.
puppy.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello.
So, as I was saying, the poet Anthony Hecht puts it aptly. He writes that, quote, Rosanna Warren lives in our tarnished, everyday, ramshackle world of loss, anguish, and sacrifice, but she inhabits almost as vividly a realm of classic purity. And in some of her best, most moving poems, she dwells in both regions at once. And within, it seems, the same breath. It is a beautiful miracle of bilocation. This is a quality I also find in a poem from So Forth called That the Earth is Suspended, which addresses the pre-Socratic philosopher Anaximander. It's a poem that feels very timely today, I had read it in the spring when it appeared in the New Yorker, and I'm hearing it with different ears coming back to it this fall. Rosanna writes, each night scatters frost. On sidewalks, we tread on broken sky. You are sick and far away. The world is in flux, said Anaximander. Worlds are born, appear, and disappear. We perish, even the gods fade. Spare me the industrial daffodils poking through scraps of snow. This season will have its hard birth, and we will be dragged into light. Rosanna's previous acclaimed poetry collections include Stained Glass, which is named the Lamont Poetry Selection by the Academy of American Poets, Snow Day, Each Leaf Shines Separate, Departure, and Ghost in a Red Hat. Rosanna has published a highly regarded book of a work of literary criticism titled Fables of the Self, Studies in Lyric Poetry. And in her translational and editorial endeavors, she's translated works by Max Jacob, Pierre Reverdy, Patrizia Cavalli, Horace, and Catullus, and has published a co-translated verse rendition of Euripides' The Suppliant Women. She's edited multiple translations of Eugenio Montale by William Arrowsmith from his poetic diaries to Cuttlefish Bones. She edited a collection which is titled The Art of Translation, Voices from the Field, which features distinguished translators who participated in the Boston University Translation Seminar. Her own poems have been translated into Italian, Russian, Polish, and French, with a recent collection published just in France in 2019 in France, translated by Aude Pivin. So félicitations for that as well. In a recent interview, Rosanna described her translation process, which interests me very much, by using an analogy that I find striking. She said, I think of it as shamanistic and theatrical. I try to create an illusion in English of the feel of the form of the original. To me, it has to be performable. It has to be almost singable, and it has to give the hearer, listener, reader the illusion of being under the spell of something like the original music. This is a gorgeous description of what one attempts to do. Translating poetry, like writing poems itself, is a form of poiesis that involves inspiration and surely magic when it is in the hands of Rosanna Warren. Rosanna is the recipient of too many awards for me to enumerate today, but I will just mention that she has been laureled by the Academy of American Poets, the American Academy of Arts and Letters, the Guggenheim Foundation, and the American Council of Learned Societies, among others. It is my enormous pleasure to introduce Rosanna Warren this evening. I'm greatly looking forward to hearing her read her poems. Please join me in giving her a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Rachel, so much. And thank you, Starsha. Thank you to the seminary co-op. Thank you, Jesse. You've all been immensely welcoming and generous. I'll read some poems and then Rachel and I will talk, and then we'll hope to have comments and questions. So I'll start with poems from So Forth. Cotillion photo. These young women will last forever, posed like greyhounds, trapped in the silver crust of the frame. You can't tell one from another. The breed is so pure. They will never run. Each one aloft on a frozen wave of white cotillion lace, to resemble marriage, to resemble fate. I remember July's sun pouring down in a prickly meadow, and a garter snake skin laid out like fairy lingerie on a stone wall. This was Connecticut. There would be a stone wall. Crickets were scraping marrow from the day. I was young. I'd been alone for weeks. I painted the meadow morning and afternoon, trying to capture the crackling sound with my brush. I was reading Oedipus Rex. I understood neither the snakeskin nor the play. Your life is one long night, said Oedipus to the prophet. Oedipus, who saw nothing. Oak trees rustled in drought. In saffron grass, small creatures skittered. There came a day when I said to myself, I should prefer to sleep. Small planets tasted dry and bitter on my tongue. And 2 days later, I woke, alone in the creaking barn at dusk, not knowing what day, what month, what year, but feeling the hall of earth rolling on its way. It is not your fate that I should be your ruin, the prophet said. I moved my arms, my legs. I unclenched my hands and stood up, dizzy from the cot. What was to come would come in its own good time, outside the frame. The moon was rising above the hill. A shy wind gathered force, and trees in their black silhouettes linked arms. This, I think, as Rachel suggested, the what one might call the personal and the political are fairly inextricable in this book, in my poems generally, I hope. This poem is called Shelf. It involves a human skull that was found in a field in Turkey. And if you think back to the early years of the 20th century, you can imagine whose skull might be found in a field in Turkey. Shelf. A human skull among the bee below. Dust to dust it all evens out on the shelf under a veil of gray. There was a think in that cavity once. I have forgotten whole years of my life. In those eye sockets once, surprise and fear. You picked it up in a field in Turkey. A small head, a child, a youth. Who knows how he, she died, though we can imagine, yes, horribly imagine, and so forget. Better look at the Kenyan statuette of a woman carrying a pot on her head, or the soapstone dove from Japan, or twisted driftwood. Why go looking for sorrow? Yet we look, we hunt. You probe the boiled mackerel head for every mite of sustenance, brain, the tiny white golf balls of eyes, the fatty ribbon along the jaw, an augury in each bite. I don't want to remember how much pain I've caused. Centuries of war stored in our craniums. But in that skull, now crouched on the shelf, no echo, no prayer, only air, a relic of air. This poem, Northeast Corridor, those of you who live in the Northeast will recognize as being the Amtrak route between Boston and New York City. I wrote it some years ago, but the feeling of the country hurling itself away has only gotten more acute. Northeast Corridor. Catechist of gnarled oak trees, marshes, suburban marinas, cinders and gutted mattresses, I let myself be slung along tracks from one city toward another. Stain of rose water where the sound remembers the sun, where reeds write hieroglyphs in a silver-plated bog. A dilapidated barge, half sunk, hunches from slime. Chain link fences, dim factories, tumble of trash down a bank. My countryside hurls itself away as twilight catches in each broken window. The yachts are shrink wrapped for their winter coma. I'm riding away from my love. It is the secret of holding the sword with nothing in your hands, the demon sermon instructs. Am I holding a sword? My hands are open. I touch the window of this speeding train. My heart was torn open, and now it's all window. Branches have ripped the cirrus gauze, and evening floods through. Dalmatian spotted woods, snow patches and leaf patches spin by. Wooden stakes poke like bad teeth from mud flats. The silken pearl gray kimono of sky is draped over Long Island Sound. The horizon's illegible. We have left shingled houses, sidewalks, picket fences behind in a blur, back where we made the childhood promises. We signed our names, but wrote in invisible ink. I spent, at least before the pandemic, I used to spend some months every year in France, where I grew up, partly. This poem, July, is set in a French city, though it could be any modern city with teenagers and difficult places to live. July. Under the cliff walls of apartment blocks, on a narrow patch of grass and as tough and discolored as old carpet, they have parked their motorbikes and distributed themselves. Girls and boys, some lounged on the sward, some on cement paving in a strip of shade, some on two facing wrought iron benches planted in concrete. Out of range of grown-ups, they play cards, they scuffle. A girl places her head on a boy's lap to practice kissing. They smoke, they pass lit cigarettes back and forth. A smaller boy pops a soccer ball against the wall with slow, heat-drugged, sidewise kicks. Hours pass, cigarettes burn down. The ball thuds and shadows lengthen across concrete from 4 cypresses and 6 anorexic ginkgos. Day is endless. Summer is endless. Their throats sweetly sear. They drink Coke and toss the plastic bottles on the grass. This place, for now, is theirs. They can throw what they want. Their lungs are their own to burn. Their limbs loll in the loosened harmony of dancers at rest. They can pick themselves up when they want. And here's another poem. This one is more distinctly set in France. The title is Sans domicile fixe, SDF, which is a French socio-jargon for homeless people without fixed domicile. In the last some years in France, I've been noticing more and more what sort of a newer tribe of wandering homeless people who are not the clochards, the tramps that I knew in my childhood, and not the Roma people at all, but a sort of wandering tribe of youngish folks with dreadlocks and big dogs. My France is not a vacation spot. My France is a very suffering country. This is not news to anybody who reads any of the newspapers. Sans domicile fixe. Clouds like boulders like petrified clouds that rolled down and stalled in the meadow. That was yesterday. Now we're in the centripetal apartment with peonies aging in 2 vases, pink and cream petals frizzling into crepe. Mirrors multiply the years. I see you seeing me in the gilt-framed oval by the desk. I see us both in the window, reflected in the closet door glass. My eye corners crease. Flecks of dark chocolate streak the inner spines of all the books. Words are drugs. Love is a drug, while Europe contracts into dark burgundy upholstery and cushions. Deep in the French-English dictionary, 3 asterisks mark extreme vulgarity. How long can we stay here? Outside, the new homeless twist dreadlocks and pace their mastiffs. Tattoos bulge on their forearms. Paper wrappers and crushed cans clot the gutter. Sun leaps off the roof tiles. A brisk sea wind. In the mountains, those small purple flowers with pods and curling tendrils, now you tell me, were vetch. I have for years loved this word vetch and was just looking for the right poem to put it in. One of the more overtly political poems in this book is called Samson, 1674, the year that Milton died. The poem is dedicated to John Milton, and what the poem keeps in mind Samson Agonistes and and the contemporary politics of the United States, where what used to be a republic seems to be tottering. Samson, 1674, for John Milton. Their theaters cackle and bray. Their carriages clutter the streets. Cockades, torches, liveries clash. Philistine hearts, jocund and sublime, they smear their deals. Gold on columns and cornices. Temples fume with burning fat. The choicest girls parade with kohl-ringed eyes and spangled thighs. Let the poor creep into shadows. They offend. The prisons teem, and one old man sits in his doorway in a loose gray coat, letting sunlight lay its palms on his sightless eyes. He's seen too much. Kingdoms askew, skies collapsing, idols crammed back into shrines. Let the mad cavalcade pass by. There's a kind of defeat that resembles victory. There's a temple raised up only in the mind, and another to be pulled down in dream, arms wrapped around massive pillars to tug and shatter the roof on guzzling lords. Not by his arms, not by his gouty hands, but the phoenix spark sleeps in ash. I'll just read a few more. One of the sequence that Rachel mentioned, Legend of Good Women, this is one of that sequence for poems about remarkable women artists in various arts. This one has an epigraph from Marianne Faithfull, the pop singer. I'm just going to take a swig of tea. If I were Auden, it would be gin. What he called an analeptic swig, but mine is tea. Away. The whole trick of this thing is to get out of your own light. Marianne Faithfull. She said she sang very close to the mic to change the space. And I changed the space by striding down the Boulevard Raspail at dusk in tight jeans until an Algerian engineer plucked the pen from my back pocket, as if you're inside my head and you're hearing the song from in there. He came from the desert. I came from green suburbs. We understood nothing of one another over glasses of metallic red wine. I was playing girl. He played man. Several plots were afoot, all misfiring. One had to do with my skimpy black shirt and light hair, his broad shoulders and hunger after months on an oil rig. Another was untranslatable. Apollinaire burned his fingers on June's smoldering lyre, but I had lost my pen. The engineer read only construction manuals. His room was dim and narrow, and no, the story didn't slide that way, though there are many ways to throw oneself away. One singer did it by living by a broken wall until she shredded her voice, but still she offered each song, she said, like an Appalachian artifact, like trash along the riverbank, chafing at the quay, plastic bottles, a torn shirt, fractured dolls, through which the current chortles an intimate tune. And I'll read another poem that Rachel mentioned, the poem to Anaximander, that the earth is suspended. I know Rachel also likes these pre-Socratics. That the earth is suspended. As Scylla prinks purple from half-thawed clods, and the cardinal flings his ribbon of song in two high arcs, then trails the vibrato among the boughs. May unclenches, but not enough. Buds grip fetal leaves. Each night scatters frost. On sidewalks we tread on broken sky. You are sick and far away. The world is in flux, said Anaximander. Worlds are born, appear, and disappear. We perish. Even the gods fade. Spare me the industrial daffodils poking through scraps of snow. The season will have its hard birth, and we will be dragged into light. For how many years has that ill corroded your gut? Whirlwinds, typhoons break out of the cloud. The tearing makes thunder, the crack against black makes the flash. So natural philosophy began. You watched glaciers slide and crash at the tip of the earth. You floated on a rope into ice crevasses to catch the gleam and the groan. Ice sculpted the planet and sculpts it still. You hammered aluminum into that shape. The stars are a wheel of fire, broken off from earth fire, surrounded by air. We came from the unlimited. To it we return. So taught Anaximander of Miletus, who thought we would be destroyed. And I'm going to end with 3 new poems. I've been writing a lot this summer in seclusion in the woods. So this is my first experience of throwing them like paper airplanes at anybody else. Still life. Not silk roses, but 2 mackerel purchased that morning at the stall in Campo dei Fiori still vaguely silver, but tarnishing fast, slumped across a plate. I'd set up for art. Their eyes blurred. Art filled the apartment with odors of turpentine and decomposing flesh. Their gills sagged. Oh, but I was determined. By the second day, they'd sunk into themselves. I was 18 and seriously virginal. My friend composed hieratic, petrified bouquets whose silk daisies, peonies, and roses would never wilt. Her canvas an Egyptian tomb, and she a priestess. In my rotting fish, I smelled a future not yet touched, in which the man who had held me turned away as bonfire light licked the waves, and someone strummed a lute, and far out beyond the dark harbor, lights from fishing boats blinked, and I knew I'd spend that night alone on the damp sand. It was like being born. At dawn, the boats returned. The fishermen sold their catch, wet starlight still twitching from tubs along the quay. Night still a quiver in the fish's eyes. This title of this poem, Dead Flowers, is the title of a famous song from the Rolling Stones. Dead flowers. If you hurt yourself before someone else hurts you, is that homeopathic? Watch me prick poison into my skin, sign my name in pain. Watch me miss the appointment, cancel the call. Watch me gulp smoke and receive a certificate of enlightenment between the smeared egg yolk horizon to the west and the bone-white eastern sky. The emperor appoints me to the Poetry Bureau, and I declare myself queen of the underground. On the back road, the turkey vulture plucked the guts from the squashed squirrel, then flapped up to the dead branch of the shagbark hickory to examine us, examining the carcass. Oh, sacerdotal bird, with your crimson scalp and glossy vestments, teach us to translate the spasm, the cry, the disintegrating flesh, the regret. What can be made of all this grief? Over the butter yellow, humming, feather-grassed midday meadow, skim the shadows of vultures, ghostly 6-foot wingspan, V, swiftest signature, turning death into speed. And I'll end with a quieter one of these new poem. This one was inspired from a trip last year, my first trip to Japan, and the wonderful Zen Tenryuji temple in Kyoto. Soseki's shrine. The mother bear stands on her hind legs to bat hard green apples from the boughs, while 2 cubs slide up the trunk as if black water should flow upward and disappear in shuddering leaves. The 3rd cub rummages for fruit in tall grass. The apples are tiny and sour. The bears are hungry, working hard. The whole meadow strives, shakes with striving as crickets thrum and dragonflies slice the air, and overhead the peregrine falcon floats its high staccato cry. My fingers are stained with ink. In Kyoto, in Soseki's ancient temple, The stone basin for mixing ink stands upright, a shrine to writing. At its base, water in a trough, a dipper. One dips, one pours water over one's hands. One prays to write purely. How hard when we want so much. We're hungry. We want to leave our names. Scholars' hands, the exile researcher told me, holding my hands in hers. Calluses, ink stains, rough cuticles, hands that work. She's dead now. Muso Soseki's pond has lasted for 700 years. Thank you all, and Rachel, thank you so much for your hospitality to these poems.
Rosanna, thank you. That was wonderful. That was mesmerizing, invigorating. And thank you for sharing with us your new, fresh poems. It's really exciting to get a sneak peek. And I'm still thinking about that line, turning death into speed, in the penultimate poem. That was, oh, thank you. I see all the hands, the silent hands clapping, but they are clapping. I have a few questions. Okay, truth be told, I have many questions for you, but I'm going to restrain myself and ask just a couple. And I want to open this up to our audience. Thank you everyone for being here tonight, for being with us in this virtual space. And I'll invite you to enter your questions into the chat. You can see the chat button just below. When you run your cursor down to the bottom of the screen, you type your question in and I'll be able to collect them from there. So Rosanna, so to go back to the series of poems, The Legend of Good Women, can you tell a little bit about, I'm curious what inspired this series, what the process was like putting it together? Were there any figures who were left out in the end? How did you come to this constellation?
Like so much of my work, it was organic and not pre-plotted. I found myself writing the poem to and about Mary Sidney, whose work I adore. You as a translator, Rachel, I know you would care about this, that as in the Renaissance, for women writers, women poets, so much of their great work was done in the form of translation. And she translated many of the so-called Sidney Psalms that her brother, Sir Philip Sidney, translated, but she did more of them than he did. He died partway through. And I just want to make a plug for the Sidney Psalms, and especially for Mary Sidney as a marvelous and important English writer. I don't think she's sufficiently recognized. Her Psalms are fantastic. And she also translated Petrarch and much else. Anyway, so I was writing, I wrote the poem to her, not thinking about any other poem. And then I found myself writing the poem, a very different kind of poem, about Coco Chanel, who is a monster. I mean, from my point of view, a moral monster, but a great artist. And so just fascinated by that very sick world of France in the mid 20th century. Anyway, so then I had those two poems, and the Marianne Faithfull poem sort of came along, sort of partly spliced with Apollinaire, as you heard. And then when I had the three of them, I realized that something in me was being attracted to these forceful women artists, and to the one of the others. I have two about the painter Gwen John, whom I love, whose brother Augustus John was a far more, quote, successful painter in their time in the early mid 20th century. But Augustus John said years later it was Gwen who was the real painter. Anyway, I just became, these poems were ways for me to explore the idea of power in art. And maybe in some larger sense, the book is very concerned with ideas about power, political power. I mean, as you notice, there are a number of poems that are in anguish and grief and rage about various forms of political power and oppression. But artistic power, too, fascinates me and can also involve very troublesome forces. and maybe especially for women, about how to be afraid to have power, to express what the vision, that have it, to misuse it. Anyway, so these 6 poems, The Legend of Good Women, became a kind of laboratory for me to explore what was the fear of power and the dangers of power, and also to find power where perhaps it hasn't sufficiently been found. I mean, I feel Gwen John is not sufficiently recognized as a painter, and I don't think that Mary Sidney is sufficiently recognized as a poet.
To return to the question of translation, since we've just mentioned that, you're a very accomplished translator. I have much admiration for your work, and you've just lived for a while with Max Jacob, keeping you company. And I'm wondering how this affects your own poems. How does the process, the magic of translation affect your process of composing poems?
It does deeply, as I imagine it does for you too. So deeply that it's hard for me to sort of have a pat answer about it. But in some way, I think it gives me what I almost think of as an anti-romantic idea about writing, is that I don't have a romantic notion of solitary genius. I feel that writing is very collective, and the way that all my learning to write from childhood on was from reading other people's writing, and growing up partly in France, going at least 1 year to the lycée in jeune fille. I was constantly reading poems or anything in other languages and translating them, and learning to be a person as well as to be a writer by living with the voices of others. So my poems are threaded through with echoes of other poems in other languages, and they're just part of a kind of recombinant DNA, and I think of it not in a Harold Bloom notion of fight to fend off predecessors. On the contrary, I think of it as a form of generosity and gracious acceptance and participation.
That's so beautifully put. Yeah, I like the idea that it's part of the recombinant DNA. That makes so much sense to me. It's amazing how the process of translating changes the neurological patterns of your brain, I think. You find structures of language resurface, and you think, where are they from? Oh, maybe it's a familiar ghost who's kept you company in the past, who's kind of whispered it in there. Speaking of which, you've spoken of certain poets as your poet saints, Hart Crane and Blake. And I could be totally off base. I also feel the presence of Wallace Stevens and W.H. Auden and Marianne Moore in this new book. Can you talk about with whom are you in conversation in this book? Who are the poets or the audiences that you're in conversation with?
Well, they're probably too diverse and many to give a list. Any list would be very partial. Apollinaire, who comes into the Marianne Faithfull poem, very important. I've been memorizing and chanting Apollinaire since I was a teenager. He's just everywhere. And not just in phrases that are plucked, but in ways of building a poem, kinds of freedom of non sequitur kind, and changing voices and changing verb tenses. All the things we associate in English with John Ashbery, very much part of what Apollinaire was doing in 1912. I mean, and Ashbery had his own. Again, it's about a participation. Ashbery made it his own in his own way, his own idiom, his own time and place. Who else? Well, in a way, I've got Hölderlin in there, and I don't read German, so my Hölderlin is mediated by Richard Seaberth and many translators, some of them in French or Italian. So again, gratitude to translators. Without translators, I wouldn't be able to read Hölderlin or Mandelstam or have the illusion that I was reading them. The Thomas Hardy is huge for me, and again has been for decades, in the risks that he took with a huge variety of verse forms, that some of which he could have invented, and the wild, erratic diction of Hardy. Some of it's just crazy and some of it doesn't work at all, but I love the risks that he takes to have this enormous lexicon. But and Stevens is certainly in there, perhaps more moderately. But I think I'm, because I live in several languages, but I mean, I think about and translate and am inspired by Italian and French, and in a slightly more mediated way, Latin and Greek. I like to think of English as a foreign language. It helps me write. It makes me more self-conscious. I like to think that I'm touching English words with fingertips that are almost painfully sensitive. I like to feel a little estranged from English in order to use it as a medium, as a literary medium. And so the kind of conversation that you talked about, I think, is partly with poets who are not writing in English.
You know, we have a question right now from our dear colleague, Nama Rokem, in comparative literature and Near Eastern languages and civilizations. And I think it's a kind of natural segue. So maybe I'll pose this question now. I'll read it from the chat, and again, invite anyone with a question or comment to enter that into the chat. Nama says, "Thank you for this wonderful reading and conversation. I'm trying to formulate a question about the past in these poems. The poem is memoir, the different ancestors and predecessors who are called forth. I guess one question is how that relates to the ongoing conversations with your saint poets and interlocutors. I was struck and moved by how much of the reading was about memory."
Thank you, Nama. Yes. I'm not sure what more to say about that, except that that when I'm writing or waiting to write, a lot of writing for me is waiting to write, which means sitting in my chair that I call my poetry boat and not allowing myself to do anything else. Certainly no email, no. It's with a notebook, at most reading other poems that might prime the pump. It's a meditative state, which sometimes gets into almost like a trance-like state. And in that state, memory starts working. It's almost like hearing voices. And not only the voices of previous writers, because they have to be there, but then they have to fade away, and something not yet literary has to come up. So Nama, I don't know if this answers your question, but that trance-like state is absolutely crucial for me, and memory starts working in a way that sometimes, if I'm lucky, delivers a vision, and then the vision has to find language somehow. Sometimes the vision comes in the form of a word or a cadence, and then that has to find.
I really appreciate your articulation of that sort of pre-linguistic aspect to making poems. How has it been in your poetry boat these past months during the pandemic? You've clearly been writing wonderful work. What has it been like for you? Such a strange time for all of us.
Such a strange time for everybody. When we were chatting before the reading started, we were talking about, I've been in a cabin in the Catskill Mountains since March in seclusion, but not in seclusion from grief and terror And so the writing has been difficult, having a lot of one's brain colonized by various terrors, terror of the pandemic and of what it was doing to millions of people around the world. Political terror. When I read the Samson poem on purpose tonight, because up until the election and in the month after the election, I really feared a coup d'etat. I really feared the end of our republic, and that made writing hard because I was asking myself, what kind of language, what kind of form, where does poetry fit in this? So besides writing postcards to prospective voters in Texas and Georgia, that was another kind of writing. I was stumbling my way and using my modest skills, such as they are, in the poetry boat of meditating and pondering and turning language over and over and trying to find, stumble. It feels like blind man's bluff. What kind of world are we in? What kind of language could meet this world? So I don't know. It was, it's been an exercise, put it that way.
Yeah. We have another question, which is another perfect segue from, but I'm going to read it out regardless. This is from the great poet Aishan Hutchinson, who says, "Thanks very much for the splendid reading, Rosanna, a true balm in these times. Your Samson poem is powerful, and Milton is a powerful, subtle presence in the sinew of your language. But can you say why you were pulled to Samson as opposed to other Miltonic creations?" And then he just messaged, "Well, that answered it. But if you'd like to make a comment."
I should thank you for that. Well, I think it was the idea of failure, the idea that the elderly blind Milton had seen with his inner eye the failure of the Commonwealth, the Cromwellian Commonwealth, failure of his political ideals, for which he had given so much of his tremendous mind power and imagination. And when that line, there's a kind of defeat that resembles victory, I was trying to imagine what this country would look like if Trump won or seized a second term, and what that defeat of a whole political arrangement would feel like, and how to think about it. So Milton was helping me. I felt Milton's political imagination in Samson, and questions about justice and failure and what can be redeemed. And the naughtiness of Milton's syntax and the splendid, always surprising course of diction, which just constantly keeps me on my toes. I think keeping Milton in mind, it's corrects one's own laziness. At least I hope it corrects mine to some extent.
Well, on that very note, we have a question from Paul D'Andrea, who says, "I can't tell if so many of your poems are very religious or if they totally avoid or maybe sidle religion. Does this make sense? Do your poems stop short of naming ultimate reality, in quotes, because you choose or because the poem itself stops itself?" And I just want to add to that, I was very curious about the presence of Jewish elements in your new book. There's a poem called Rosh Hashanah. There's a poem about Shabbat candles. There's a poem
Yes.
about Tashlich, which is a high holy day ceremony. If so, maybe just to aggregate that with that question as well.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Rachel. Let me how to put this. I'm an outsider to all these religions, but someone who since childhood has been in quest of the sacred, growing up in an atheist household, but also growing up partly, we spent many long periods, many months at a time through my childhood and youth in Italy and in France. And my parents would rent the farmhouses. They were not fancy places, and just live in remote villages in Italy and France, and throw my brother and me into the local village school. And everywhere that we went, these were Catholic countries. There were crucifixes on all the walls. We were cathedrals, churches. There were magnificent paintings in the churches, in the museums. And and as a teenager, indiscriminately reading. I've always been an indiscriminate reader. So reading Puritans, reading Milton, reading Donne, reading Dante, trying to ask myself, what shapes has the divine taken to the human and then Blake is really, really important to me. So Blake, who's a great heresiarch, to use an Apollinaire term, how have religions become machines of oppression, horrendous machines of oppression? And how have they also allowed people to have illumination, spiritual illumination? So I went through the actual process in my late 20s, early 30s of conversion to the Catholic Church, but that dovetailed with the scandal of the pedophile priests and the, to me, horror of the church authorities supporting and protecting the predators. So that conversion didn't stick, I'll put it that way. But the deeper vision is there. And in a similar way, I've been reading the Hebrew Bible since I was not in Hebrew, in English, since I was very young, and taking so deeply those stories into my imagination. For what is it, 10 years now. My partner is Jewish, and we live a fairly Jewish life, which means a lot to me. Having the rituals really are important to me. It brings me in touch with something that is not mine, but that I feel I recognize. So the poems are not religious statements, but they are part of a quest. I had a poem in an earlier book, a poem called Man in Stream, had a line which I think I've come to believe is maybe what I live by. And that line is, I wanted a day with cracks to let the godlight in. And godlight is one word in lowercase. So that's my heretical outsider religion. I wanted a day with cracks to let the godlight in. And the cracks are important. I see the cracks as human suffering, cruelty, destruction of our hopes and dreams, whatever form the crack takes.
I'm just thinking, thank you for this incredibly fulsome answer to that compound question. I'm thinking about the last poem in the book, the poem about the Shabbat Candles, and how you end that. Could I ask you to read that poem? Would you mind?
Oh, thank you.
It's such a beautiful way to end the book. And
thank you. Shabbat Candles. They finger the darkness long after the plates are cleared, and because they're lonely, multiply themselves in the black window, bowing to company, and exchange signals with the rising moon. We're asleep. God will put out the lights.
Thank you very much. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
It's such a way to kind of open out the book at the same moment that you're closing it.
I feared that it would be sentimental, but I finally decided to risk that because it's a little ambiguous. What does it mean to have God put out the lights? That could be something like Anaximander saying we would be destroyed.
Yeah. You know, I do feel like there's a kind of, this book is so beautifully crafted, and there's a kind of raw presence to it at the same time. I feel that kind of vulnerability in the poems, which is really captivating. It's something that draws me in. It's a human to human experience reading the poems.
Thank you. That moves me. I'm glad that you feel that.
I do.
Each one has to be, each poem for me is a tightrope walk over some kind of abyss, little abyss.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Well, I think we are coming to the close of our time together. If there are any last questions or comments that folks would like to throw into the chat, this would be the moment. If not, we can. I can also invite you all to unmute yourselves and to say hello, to clap, to turn on your cameras if you wish, no pressure, to just have a moment together to thank Rosanna and to congratulate her and to celebrate this beautiful book coming into the world. It's really one of the best things about 2020 is we have new important books like this one. So thank you so much, Rosanna, for sharing your work with us tonight and your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you all of you for being here, so to speak, wherever here is. Thank you all, and
exactly.
Have a good night. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Oh, so many wonderful people here. Hello.
Yes. Hello.
It's good to see your faces.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.